Something like love language and sex language exist. The sex language is a gift from Jesus. I am eternally grateful. Oh my God, I yearn for a sex language. I long to master a sex language that will allow us to enjoy fulfilling sexual encounters with God's grace. Joni Lamb's fans are in disbelief at how drastically her life has changed. A reputation for strong, faith-driven families has been built over years in Christian television, but all of a sudden everything has changed. The dedication and constancy with which Joni appears on Daystar are hallmarks of her career. A deeply personal issue has now thrust her into the center of her world. Despite the public's perception of her and her husband as unstoppable, their relationship was deteriorating behind closed doors. The verdict is in. Tragically and unexpectedly, Joni Lamb's life story has taken a different path. Knowing the tragic truth about what transpired, she only lately spoke out. Could you tell me what happened and how this will influence her future plans? Prepare to be shocked when we spill the beans on the real story behind Joni Lamb's pivotal discovery, the rumors, the speculation, and the marital strife she experienced with Doug Weiss. Rumors started swirling around Joni Lamb and Doug Weiss's marriage far before anyone became aware of the problems. The first reports were vague, coming from those in the know who had seen minor shifts in their collaboration. Their public displays of sadness and lack of engagement on social media led many to speculate that they were dating. A lot of people thought the wedding was very magical. Following Marcus Lamb's death, Joni had another love affair with renowned Christian counselor Doug Weiss. Even though their relationship was publicized as a tale of redemption, trust, and new beginnings, tensions were beginning to emerge behind the scenes. Others noticed that Doug was increasingly absent from events where he usually accompanied Joni. In public, they didn't seem to have the same chemistry. It was obvious, with a sidelong look, a tight-lipped smile, and a newly observed gap between them. Initially, fans disregarded it. While it's true that every marriage has its ups and downs, the reports took a turn for the worse. Those closest to Doug mentioned that he was feeling down due to the pressures of fame. He was a well-respected counselor who had spent years assisting couples in resolving difficult issues in their relationships. Christian television, on the other hand, was an entirely alien realm for him. Being married to Joni Lamb meant that everyone was keeping tabs on him, his background was constantly being investigated, and any slip-up could end up in the media. His relationship with Joni may have suffered as a result of the stress, according to some. However, the tales took an even darker turn. Word got out that Doug had run afoul of the law. Although there was no concrete evidence, rumors circulated that his consulting firm may be at the root of his financial troubles. Some say he was involved in legal disputes over business deals, while others say he was the subject of ongoing investigations. The fact that these rumors were circulating was concerning, even though no one had confirmed it. Was Joni aware of this before they tied the knot, or did she recently learn something that has her doubting everything? The idea that Joni and Doug had significant disagreements regarding the future of their ministry also gained traction. Throughout her life, Joni had worked tirelessly to build Daystar and ensure that Marcus's legacy would endure. According to some sources, however, Doug had strong opinions about the way things should be managed, and their disagreements caused a great deal of tension. While some speculated that Doug may have desired a larger role within the network, Joni was adamant about avoiding major overhauls. Had their marriage fallen apart at this point? People could only speculate because they lacked knowledge. However, more and more individuals began to question what was happening as time passed. Those who had previously believed that Joni and Doug's marriage was solid were beginning to doubt their earlier beliefs. Were things tense between them when they weren't together? Was Doug trying to conceal anything? The length of time this had persisted was the primary concern. Things became worse when Joni and Doug remained silent regarding these reports. Since neither of them addressed the rumors head-on, many assumed they were true. It would be more reasonable for them to come forward and clarify things if everything was fine, wouldn't you agree? Their silence only served to heighten the situation as more questions were raised as a result. Rumors began to circulate that Joni and Doug had been living apart for some time, which was the true shocker. Those in the know claim that Joni had been laser-focused on her career and had ignored any inquiries regarding her private life, while Doug had stealthily vacated the home they had shared. When exactly this began is unclear. It would indicate that their marital problems had persisted for far longer than initially anticipated. Fans who were rooting for their romance were understandably disappointed and bewildered. How did a once great marriage turn into a relationship marked by a great deal of distance and uncertainty? Were there deeper dynamics at play here, as these two appeared to be drifting apart? Even though we don't know the whole story just yet, we do know that this isn't a fairy tale anymore. The truth about Doug Weiss and Joni Lamb's affair would eventually surface. Joni reminded me of the sexual texts, but this time she downplayed them. You felt a surge of joy when she informed you about the text he had been sending you. The situation became overwhelming for me. Did you mean to say sexual texts? Imagine his actions toward us. I would prefer not to imply that we discussed sexual matters. He never sexted me, but people think we discussed sex. He never said an inappropriate thing. We abstained from sexual activity prior to our marriage. He has a reputation for being truthful. This is mere sexual language, however, that is not all. I keep quiet whenever she brings it up in conversation. My anxiety level is skyrocketing because things aren't going well. I can feel a shift happening within me. My panic attacks began at that time. There was a lot of information conveyed in the text. As she read this to me, Rachel and Beck on the other side asked, "What's going on?" I told them, I'm not going to tell them anything about that. Until our 6-person group met with Jimmy Evans, he was the only one she could trust after that. I wanted to avoid embarrassing her or bringing it up with her other children, so I called Jimmy alone. On my one-on-one call with Jimmy the day prior to our meeting, he informed me of this. "Hey, I don't know how to deal with this," I said to myself. "I was hoping you could give me a hand and clarify it for me. Is it acceptable? After a divorce, what comes next?" The agony, the disbelief, and the reactions of those around. When the news of Joni Lamb and Doug Weiss's divorce spread, fans were taken aback. Just a few months ago, they proved to be an unbreakable bond, proving that love can blossom despite tragedy. Unfortunately, the painstakingly crafted image has now crumbled, leaving behind a trail of confusion, despair, and unanswered questions. There was more to Joni's divorce than the disillusion of her marriage itself. She had hoped for a future, and now it was over. She believed that God had granted her a second opportunity at happiness following Marcus Lamb's death, so she shared her love story with millions of people. A painful reality, though, had to be faced at this point. The thing she had imagined would endure indefinitely ended far sooner than she had anticipated. Joni felt incredibly down when she was by herself. After years of pretending to have strong faith, she was now forced to confront a deeply personal issue in the most public manner imaginable. They scrutinized every aspect of her life. Everyone was observing her every move and thinking about what she said. As she mourned, she could not escape the scrutiny of others. In contrast, Doug went through some difficult times. His reputation as a marriage counselor had taken a nosedive. How could he, after decades of counseling couples on how to maintain happy relationships, fail to rescue his own? Doug was cognizant of the situation's irony, which was evident to everyone else. In terms of relationships, people didn't believe he was as trustworthy as he seemed. The children of Jan, who had accepted Doug into their family, expressed confusion and grief when asked how they were feeling. After Marcus passed away, they thought it was best for their mother to get married again, so they agreed with her decision. The pressure to protect her from the widespread criticism and abuse had finally reached a breaking point. People hated that she had to publicly go through another breakup because they could see how hurt she was. There was also discord among Doug's closest friends. Some felt the general public was being unfair to him. They said there are a lot of factors that lead to a marriage's demise and that nobody should pry into his affairs with Joni. Still, others suspected that there was more going on behind the scenes, including hidden conflicts, secrets, and tensions that hadn't been revealed just yet. Nobody in the media bothered to explain what had happened. As a sad but inevitable part of life, some Christian news sites felt sorry for Joni and Doug and offered prayers and words of support. Not everyone was ready to let go and forgive. What went wrong was discussed in the news articles, and according to some sources, Joni was taken unawares by the breakup. Some claimed that Doug's private struggles had been building for some time and that the spotlight on them was straining their relationship. Further on, there were the concepts. Many assumed that Doug had been plotting his exit from the marriage for some time, but kept quiet out of fear of upsetting anyone. Some people believed Joni had discovered something irresistible, forcing her to make the difficult decision to depart. Even before word got out, many assumed the split had been planned for quite some time. Supposedly, they had been stealthily preparing for this occasion. Joni maintained her composure in public despite everything. She spoke with great care about trusting God's plan and staying committed to her mission. Everyone was staring, and she wished they could never see how tough it was for her. In private, though, she felt depressed. Marriage is hard in and of itself, but when the whole world is watching, it becomes an entirely different ballgame. Doug also made an effort to remain invisible, but he found it challenging. His punishment was severe, and it was typical of Christian society to not forgive those who have sinned. Some thought he was being dishonest about his past, covering up truths that were just now coming to light. Some shielded him from harm by claiming that no one outside of the marriage knows the truth. When the initial shock of the split wore off, everyone's focus turned to the burning question, what comes next? Is a second marriage in Joni's future? As a public servant, would Doug ever resign? Would they ever come clean about why they broke up? What came next was anyone's guess, but one thing was certain. They had reached the end of a chapter in their lives, and the world would be watching a tempest in the courts. Is Doug Weiss headed for prison? Reportedly, Doug Weiss may be in serious legal trouble following the divorce, the sort of trouble that could lead to his incarceration. It appeared at first to be just another wild plot theory concocted by social media users and talk magazines. As word spread from those in the know, it became apparent that something was happening behind the scenes. The initial indicator that something was amiss was when Doug became invisible to everyone else. After years of being quite public about his counseling practice, speaking at conferences, and making appearances on Christian television, he suddenly stopped doing either. His social media activity decreased, and he began to have his previously agreed upon invitations to events either revoked or mysteriously rescheduled. Because of this, the rumors started to gain momentum. Could he have been hiding something? A source close to Doug then broke the news that he was the subject of an investigation into possible financial misconduct involving his counseling practice. His business practices allegedly came under scrutiny in court after some issues were discovered, according to some sources. According to some accounts, he had legal disputes with former clients, and some of those clients even went so far as to sue him. The Christian community was shocked by the prospect of Doug being in trouble with the law, regardless of the lack of official charges. Joni Lamb could not have foreseen this turn of events. After suffering through the heartbreak of her second failed marriage, she now had to endure the ordeal of seeing her ex-husband's name associated with a potential court scandal. She was taken aback, according to those who knew her well. The foundation of her life had been honesty, faith, and the belief that she was being guided by God's plan. But now she was prepared to question everything. Was she the victim of deceit? Did she really believe this person when they claim not to be who they claim to be? Mentally preparing for it made her nauseous. Knowing how easily a scandal could demolish the network she and Marcus had worked so hard to build, Joni had always been cautious about Daystar's reputation. She was aware that, even though she had no involvement, she could be subject to some scrutiny due to Doug's legal troubles. The extent to which Joni was aware prior to the breakup was already the subject of speculation in the media. Prior to everything going wrong, had she learned anything that prompted her to decide to leave Doug? Had someone warned her to keep Daystar safe by telling her to avoid him? With all the questions that kept popping up, she couldn't provide clear answers. While this was going on, Doug's problem was getting worse. Legal professionals speculated on potential outcomes. His companies could be investigated, and charges could be brought against him if he engaged in improper financial dealings. Bad things could happen if he broke any regulations regarding the secrecy of client information or the misuse of funds. The allegations against him were further supported by news reports that stated former employees or co-workers had come forward with complaints. Regarding Doug, he stated that nothing was accurate. According to those who knew him well, he was visibly upset by the accusations and maintained that he was the victim of unfair treatment. Some people, he believed, were out to tarnish his reputation by causing additional problems by capitalizing on the ones his divorce had already caused. His credibility as a Christian counselor, which he had cultivated over the years, was now in jeopardy. Accusations, even in the absence of evidence, could frequently derail a person's career in the public's perception. In defense of Doug, his backers claimed the charges were part of a larger scheme to tarnish his good name. Some in the business community who disliked him were allegedly trying to drag him down with the split, according to them. Even so, there were a few who were unsure. After keeping tabs on him for some time, some began to question whether there was more to the tale. The stories didn't originate from a single place after all. Various reports were submitted by various individuals, and they all expressed concerns about something being amiss. As the weeks passed, the stress level continued to rise. The rumors about the charges were damaging to Doug's reputation, even though they had not yet been officially filed. In the past, when churches approached him to speak, he would withdraw until they could assess the situation. His portrayal in Christian media was unprecedented. Instead of a respected mentor, he was cast as someone who could be embroiled in a scandal. For Joni, this was already a bad situation, and it got worse. She was now the go-to person for answers, and everyone was waiting for her to comment on the legal reports. In any case, what would she say? The breakup had been excruciatingly painful, but this was a whole new ballgame. According to multiple sources, she was instructed to remain silent in order to protect herself and Daystar. Others have speculated that she is still mulling over what happened and trying to make sense of how things escalated so rapidly. So what does Joni's future hold if Doug did in fact do something wrong? Are people perceiving her as a victim or as someone who made a mistake by marrying him? What if, furthermore, he was innocent? Would it be possible for her to undo what she had done? As long as the issue persisted, these were the inquiries that persisted. Although the future remained uncertain, one thing was certain. This court storm had only just begun and had the potential to alter the course of events. The public's interest in Joni Lamb and Doug Weiss's story peaked the moment she announced her engagement. After the terrible loss of her first husband, she began a new chapter in her life, one that was centered around faith and service. This tale had the air of a divinely orchestrated plot twist. However, as time went on, the fairy tale started to unravel. The once uplifting tale of love and healing descended into a web of scandal as rumors and gossip spread like wildfire. Rumors circulated long before Joni and Doug's split went public that their marriage wasn't as solid as it appeared. The rumor didn't amount to much at first. Many people took note of the fact that Doug and Joni weren't as frequent visitors as they usually were. Formerly a common sight at public events, they now appear solo. There was less buzz about their relationship when social media was filled with adorable photos and shared moments. People first assumed it was due to their lack of free time. Doug had a counseling mission to complete, and Joni had Daystar to manage. Over time, though, it became more difficult to deny that something wasn't quite right. One of the first secrets that surfaced was the fact that Joni's children had never truly approved of the marriage. According to some family members, tensions were high right from the start. It was said that Joni's children were more cautious, despite her eagerness to move on and be happy again. Their parents had established a life together, and they perceived Marcus Lamb as the only one who could match him. According to some family members, Joni's decision to remarry so soon after Marcus's death strained relations within the family. Fights allegedly broke out behind closed doors. In public, the family always appeared united, but behind the scenes, tensions were rising. The news that Doug Weiss had hidden secrets of his own when he entered the marriage only added insult to injury. Doug had a reputation for being a trustworthy mentor until some people began to question his character. Some people didn't believe him when he claimed certain things about his job, his financial situation, or his previous relationships. Since Joni was so eager to begin a new chapter in her life, some worried that she might have ignored warning signs. Some felt she had placed too much faith in an individual who wasn't who he claimed to be. The rumor mill claimed that Joni and Doug had been feuding heavily over their respective public and private personas. No one could stop talking about this scandal. While Joni had spent decades expanding her kingdom with Daystar, Doug was accustomed to managing his church independently. Even though Joni wasn't certain, rumors circulated that Doug was eyeing a promotion at Daystar. Doug reportedly wanted a larger voice in decision-making, but Joni felt pressured to accommodate him to a system that had been established prior to his arrival, according to some accounts. After hours of fighting, it was said that their divergent views on leadership, ministry, and balancing personal and professional lives were the root of their many arguments. Then, the worst news broke. Joni felt she had to terminate the marriage because of something she had learned about Doug. While some speculated that it was related to his legal troubles, others linked it more to his private life. From financial misdeeds to trust betrayals, numerous hypotheses were advanced, but no definitive conclusions were reached. The one certainty was that Joni had ended her marriage irrevocably and was not planning to return. Naturally, there was a rationale behind every news item. The media portrayed Joni as a victim of betrayal who was shocked and distressed by the situation. Some thought she rushed into her marriage and was now stuck with the consequences. A few even went so far as to claim that the couple was just using each other as pawns in a publicity stunt rather than a genuine relationship.